Sawadee Krap and welcome to another episode here for the Fungi Pod, Mindful Media and Communication. And I'm just off a conference here in Bangkok, Thailand, MedCom 2025. Quick shout out, had the honor to be a plenary speaker there on AI impact on society, storytelling, communication, and so on. It was very cool. So got like a nice award / thank you, which is very cute. So check it out, hashtag MedCom, MEDCOM 2025, if you want to see some speakers, some speeches, all those things. Shout out to them, not a paid ad, just happy to have been part of that. Very nice, cool connections, I appreciate it. Okay, but now let's jump into the episode, and it's about basically what I was just alluding to, because that's what I talked about at that conference too, to some extent, like how the media manipulates your reality. And the thing is, you think, right? You think you know what's happening in the world because you listen to podcasts, you check out your IG, TikTok feeds every day. You know what's up. You see stuff in your feed. You read news headlines, maybe even, right? Watch the news on IG, you scroll the feed, but here's the twist. You're not seeing reality. You're seeing a version of reality that's curated, that's cropped, that's filtered, that's framed. It's not always fake, just incomplete. And the wild part, most of the time, you don't even notice. So welcome to your reality bubble. Because here's the thing, okay? You're not just passively absorbing information. That might have been the case like 50 years ago when we've just been like bombarded by the TV and there was nothing else. But you're living inside this media bubble. One that's been shaped for you but not by you. And that bubble that you're in, right? It's not built from lies. That's why it's so hard to understand, to grasp. If it would be all lies, you'd be like, oh yeah, we're gonna pop that bubble and jump out. But it's not. It's built from omissions, from emphasis, and from emotionally charged repetition. Because the media does not tell you what to think. If the media would tell you what to think, you would be like, no, don't tell me what to think. But it absolutely tells you what to think about. That's a gender setting theory 101, right? We talked about this many a times here on the podcast, a theory from the 70s that's still applicable today. It's painfully relevant even, because it happens all the time. Why? Because your attention is a currency. And every news outlet, right, every platform, every creator out there is competing for that currency, for your attention. So most of those curators, creators, and so on, they focus on what works. Outrage, conflict, simplicity. Which means the issues you care about, half the time, you did not even choose them. They were chosen for you because they work. Because they get the clicks, the engagement, the views. And we gotta understand why. And if we do, then we can choose whether or not to follow that or not. Or try to maybe find a way out of that media bubble. So let's break it down real quick. You know what I'm doing in the podcast? Quick theory breakdown. So, first of all, the one I mentioned, agenda setting theory. Could be familiar with it if you listened to the podcast before, right? You assign importance to topics based on how much they show up in media. If the news keeps hammering like immigration, totally not a related subject because I spent a whole day at immigration yesterday, it shows up in the media. If your feed is filled with climate panic, you feel like the world's gonna end next week. By the way, last elections, at least in Germany, no one talked about the climate anymore. If you never see anything about healthcare, it fades into the background noise and you don't care about it. It's not just what's shown, it's also what's not shown that distorts your worldview. Okay? Because it's on purpose. Number 2, framing theory. Now even when, like, let's say 2 outlets cover the same story, how they present that story can change everything. Yeah, one calls it a protest, the other calls it a riot. Yeah, one shows a crowd holding signs, the other shows a guy throwing a brick. Same event, completely different emotional response, right? That's framing theory in action, okay? The language, the visuals, the structure, that all shapes how we react, how you react. So you do not just absorb the facts, you absorb the spin that's been put on that story. Number 3, cultivation theory. This one's more of a slow burn. Yeah, over time, the more media you consume, the more it becomes your version of normal. So if you watch violent content all the time, the world feels dangerous. If you live in this hyper-curated, aesthetic land, your life feels boring. If there's constant political mudslinging, you stop believing that anything is real. So your worldview gets cultivated, hence the cultivation theory. It's like cultivating crops in a garden. But instead of sunshine and soil, it's clickbait and chaos, because it sells. And now you're saying, yeah, okay, but it's just theories. Well, let's make it more real, okay? One more time. 2 networks, same event, completely different scenes. No, same example as before. One shows peaceful protesters handing out water bottles. The other loops 10 seconds, guy smashing a window. What do you remember? Exactly. Yeah, this is how we build parallel realities. People think they're disagreeing, but really, they just watch different edits of that same moment. So you can't even say you're lying because they're not lying, but you see what they're doing, putting spins on it. Or, social media is obvious, right? You search for something vaguely political or controversial. And then social media, TikTok, IG, whatever you're using, makes a few guesses and starts feeding you more of what it thinks you agree with. You like one post, the algorithm goes yeah, cool, here's 400 more that lean the exact same way. And before you know it, you're in this feedback loop. Your worldview is being reinforced, not challenged. That's not a conversation, that's confirmation. And confirmation feels a lot like clarity, right? Until it's not. Easy example, 2016 US elections. How did Trump get elected? I thought no one likes him, no one votes for him. That's exactly what happened. Yeah, confirmation feels like clarity until it's not. But let me hit you with one more example. Think about Netflix docs. Lots of them on right now. Yeah, Tiger King was awesome during the pandemic. Fire Festival, Social Dilemma, maybe even thinking back. All of them feel like reality, but they're cut, they're scored, they're structured for emotional payoff. You're watching a truth, but not the truth. And in that gap between fact and feeling, that's where this manipulation lives. And we have to understand that. If we know that, we can choose to believe it, not believe it, do our own research, to add to it. But unfortunately, lots of audiences do not know that. And how should they, right? And the thing is, in theory, we could all understand it. We could all, know about that. But there's still a reason why it works and why we actually kind of like it. Because now I'm going to hit you one more time, but with the uncomfortable part, okay? Ready? We like being manipulated. Not consciously, of course, but we prefer a version of reality that's clean, that's understandable, and emotionally satisfying. And we like simple villains, bad guy. We like stories that confirm what we already feel. We like clarity, especially right now in such a chaotic world where you don't know who's the good guy, who's the bad guy. We feel good feeling clarity. That's why the media simplifies everything. Complexity doesn't trend, and nuances don't sell. Do you really think you could break down the whole Middle East conflict into a 30-second TikTok? No, but it's because, again, no one wants to hear nuances, no one wants to read about complexities. We want it simple. Bad guys, good guys, easy. Yet reality is a mess, and media tidies it up and puts like nice soundtrack under it. So the more emotional the story, the more likely it spreads. And the more divisive the headline, the longer you stay on it. That's not journalism. That's retention engineering. Now the question is, of course, what can we do about it? And look, you can't unplug from the entire media system, right? Of course not. But you, me, all of us, we can get smarter about how it shapes us. And here's how. Just ask better questions. When you consume something, ask what's not being shown. Like, why is it happening? Who is being framed as the problem versus the victim? What I consume now, does it make me feel informed or just emotional? Yeah, sometimes I watch those clips too, of course, on IG, and I'm like, oh, no, whoa. Just emotions right now. Did I actually learn something? Did I understand something? Do I know why this happened? Would I believe this story if roles were reversed? Or does it just fit my narrative right now? And that last one, right, I think that's the killer question. If you'd react differently based on who's involved, then your worldview's probably already been edited. And that's hard to accept. So, before you leave this episode with like, oh my God, everything sucks. No, wait. Because I don't want to like hate on just everything, because we shouldn't be hating, right? And to be quite honest, even though I work in the field, right, I study communications and media, all those things, I feel the same way. And so you're not crazy if you feel like the world feels kind of distorted. And you're just seeing it through a filter that was never designed to keep it real. Social media, any news outlet, anything media, traditional media, TV, whatever, was never designed to keep it just real. It was designed to keep you engaged, to make you feel smart, scared, angry, right? Emotional. So if you want clarity, you're not going to find it in the algorithm. You will find it by stepping back and zooming out, by asking who's benefiting from the version of the world that you are being shown in this very moment. Because the moment that you can see that frame, right, you stop being the passive viewer and you start being a critical thinker. And in 2025, that's your superpower. See the frame. I'll talk to you next time. Buddy Cap.